Our next stop along the pathway is the esophagus. And the esophagus is kind of cool. And a lot of people just take it for granted, but the esophagus is about a foot-long tube that goes from the top of your throat all the way down to your stomach. And we don't think of it as being that long because we think of our neck or this little area that's maybe 4 to 6 inches long, depending on how long your neck is. But the esophagus actually is through your neck, goes behind your heart, and then down to your stomach. So when you swallow food, it takes about 7 to 8 seconds to get to your stomach. You think you're done because you chew, 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 you swallow, gulp, over, right? Wrong. Because as you're swallowing, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, bloop, 7 into the stomach. It's actually kind of a long process for it to get down here because the method that your esophagus uses is called peristalsis, which is like you squeezing a toothpaste tube, right? You start at one end and you squeeze to push the toothpaste out the other end. Well, your esophagus does the same thing. If you look at your manual, down here in the bottom right-hand corner, you've got this tube, and you can see little rings or areas will squeeze at one time. So it's almost like this. You squeeze the top, and it squeezes down, all the way down, so that the food goes in one direction. You don't want it coming back the other way. That's a whole other story. But this peristalsis slowly squeezes, so that 7 seconds is actually a longer time than you think. Another thing that the esophagus does is it releases mucus. And when you think of mucus, you think of snot and a cold or whatever, but it's really like that. It's a denser water that has a lot of carbohydrates in it to make it slippery and slimy so that when you're pushing the food down, it's not dry. It's like a slip and slide going down your throat. There's nothing absorbed in your esophagus, and the muscle actually has 2 layers. It has one called the longitudinal that goes the length for pushing down, and it has another one that's circular that squeezes so that it blocks anything from going back up. So your esophagus is actually pushing down and squeezing at the same time to push food forward. If you vomit, what happens is all this opens up and your stomach says, time to clean out. So let's actually take a peek at the 4 layers. As we're going through these 4 layers, I want you to keep in mind that your entire GI tract from this point all the way to the end has the same 4 layers. It starts with a mucosa layer at the surface. So if we look at our manual here, it's this dark purple layer, and these are actually epithelial cells. So they're just like your skin because remember, it's continuous all the way through. The next layer is the submucosa. The submucosa literally means below the mucosa, and it has things like blood vessels in it and connective tissue. So things that would normally move across the membranes will go into the submucosa and into your blood. The third layer is the muscularis. Take a guess at what that's made out of, right? Muscle. And there are 2 layers of muscle. And we'll actually see that. See this dense muscle here with that thin connective tissue layer between it. And the last one is the serosa or the adventitia. It's the outer layer that kind of wraps and holds everything together. So you have a wrapper around the outside of your body, but you also have a wrapper on the inside too. It's just like a hot dog. I mean, all the way around the outside you have to have a wrapper, right, to keep everything in. So we're going to look at these 4 layers. To do that, you're going to need to pull out slide number 10. Right here. So we're going down, we're going to find slide 10. Oops, that was not it. There it is. Slide 10, esophagus. We're going to do our setup the way we always do our setup. I've already prepared mine. Lower your stage. Which objective lens should you have? The red. I love it when you say it, you're faster than I can. We're going to slide in. You can see, I can see that it's right in there, that red. Got to be something good. Right, I'm going to focus. I already see the pink, so I'm just doing fine focus. It's coming, here it's coming. Taking my time. I should have started with coarse. What were there? Great. Looks great. Okay, so we can see the different layers. And when you look at this, kind of keep in mind it's a tube, right? So this is only a section of the tube. That crisscross right there in the middle, that is the opening. So that's where the food would go. when your esophagus is not doing anything, it stays closed. So all these folds are actually like looking at my hand right here where they meet, right? So you can see the line coming up between my fingers, over here between my fingers, and same thing on this side. But I can open my fingers up and get a big wide opening. That's what the esophagus does to swallow. And then it will squeeze back down and compress. Your esophagus normally stays closed. So if we look at the 4 different layers, starting at the inside of the esophagus, so where the food would be, let's see if I can show you here. So there's where the food would be. You can see the very first layer along there, kind of a darker color, right? You can see a second layer, the submucosa. We can see a couple muscle layers through here, and then we can see the outer layer, the serosa or the adventitia. Let's zoom in on this. So we have our 4x, so we're looking at 40 total magnification. We're going to click it over to our 10x, the yellow objective. Nice. A lot better. And I'm going to try and move this so that maybe I can see all of the layers at one time. So we'll just look around. Ooh, actually that might be where we have to go. I can tell there's muscle. Ooh, that's not too bad. Go right up here. Oh yeah, that's great. So it's actually top to bottom. Awesome. Let's see if we can actually zoom in a little bit more. So I'm going to flip. Oh yeah, we can totally zoom in a little bit closer. That autofocus, every time I turn it off, it just keeps popping up. Great. So we can come in a little bit closer. Let's go back to our 10x. Because this is a really good view. There we go. So if we were to take notes, what are we looking at? We're looking at right here. We see it on 10x. And of course, 10x, I shouldn't say plus, keep doing that, for our ocular, so 100 times magnification. We can see all 4 layers doing it this way. So the first layer down here, we have kind of this ridges going up. You don't have to be perfect when you draw it. And going down. And we can see lots of little cells through there, right? So let's say about how thick that is. Yeah, about this thick. Up and around. And this layer is the first layer that you bump into. And you can see all the little nuclei in there at 100x. We're not close enough right now to figure out exactly what it is, but we'll zoom in. And then you can see how it gets a little bit darker right after that. So, a little bit darker layer here. It's a transition. This is our basement membrane, if you remember talking about that when we talked about the skin briefly. Goes all the way around. So this is the layer that actually glues the epithelium down. So this is mucosa. That's the name of that layer. It makes mucus, cleverly named, and its cells are epithelial cells. All right. When you find epithelial cells, typically in the mouth and the esophagus, you'll have lots of layers. So what are we looking at? If it's lots of layers, is it simple or stratified? Yep, stratified. So you're looking at stratified epithelium. If you look really close, you can see lots of flattened cells all the way through here. Lots of layers. So if you eat something scratchy or rough or abrasive, If you only had one layer of cells, it would scratch it right off. So in your mouth and your esophagus, you actually have lots of layers of epithelium. Okay, right underneath it, so this is our basement membrane. And then you can see a little scattered, bring this back up, a lot of scattered cells along here, right? It's your submucosa. So let's label that one. Let's see how we draw it. You can see a dark layer right about here, starting it off. So let me show you. There's the dark layer right along here. You can see that's a separation of the next set. Kind of gets vague through here. You can actually see a hollow tube here, part of a hollow tube here. So those would be vessels. Let's draw those a little bit. And this is a little bit more spread out, the submucosa. Let's doodle it. So we have kind of a roughness here. Moving along. And your picture might be a little bit different than mine. You're going to find that layer. And draw it. So here's my submucosa. I'm writing really small, but I know what it is. S-U-B. So we have mucosa, first layer, submucosa below it. I can see a lot of these little tiny cells. Again, they're spread out. But when I get over here, I saw a small blood vessel. I see another blood vessel. Because remember, the submucosa has blood vessels in it. So I'm just going to put blood vessel. See if you can find any blood vessels in yours. Okay, ready for the next. So after the submucosa, you're going to start seeing the muscular layers. Here we go. You can see the two top muscular layers kind of going around. It's right along here. And you have muscle that's going kind of at you. Okay, and I see all these little tubes. Draw that. That'd be perfect. But the point is, I'm seeing all these little tubes that are coming at me. That means that this muscle that's up here on the top, right here, it's coming at me in this perspective. Let me see if I can show you a little bit. Okay. So if I'm a muscle, remember, going like this, you can see the tips of me if I'm coming at you. The next layer that's right above it is actually going perpendicular, right? So now I see the long length in the muscle cells. Two sets of muscle cells. I have some that are coming towards me, and I have some that are going sideways. So if I'm an esophagus, I've got one layer that's going longitudinal, the length of the esophagus, and I have one that's wrapping around circular-like. Let's see if we can figure it out. Right? So here we have, if this is the hollow core, here we have the ones coming towards us. They would be longitudinal, and then a circular that's going around the outside. Oops, I dropped my pen. So here we have combined muscularis, right? That's the muscle layer. And then with this one, I can see the muscle fibers going this way. So we're just going to quickly color it in, so I know the direction. And then the outer layer, where I'm just seeing pieces of it, but real fine shading, is the serosa, also known as the adventitia, the outer wrapper that goes around your esophagus. You can doodle. We'll go and look at some of these a little bit closer. you go. There's the hollow center, which, by the way, we call a lumen. So if I were labeling it over here on my drawing, I would write lumen. And I can see these epithelial cells across here. See how they're kind of flat here on the top? And then as I get lower, they get more square. So there's a cell, there's a cell, there's a cell. When we're labeling stratified, we always describe the top layer. So this is squashed cells across the top. So it must be a stratified squamous. Right? If I follow it down, let's see if I, whoops, I went up. Trying to find, there's a blood vessel. A couple blood vessels. Now in the submucosa, right, it doesn't look the same. You can see how the epithelial layer is pretty uniform, right? And then here, not so uniform. We have lots of different cells in here. Cells that are forming blood vessels, blood itself, immune cells. Remember, this is the first line of defense. If you ate a bunch of bacteria and it got through this epithelium, it'd be going into here. So you need to fight, right, and protect your body. Right. We're going to go up. The next layers, whoops, right by them. So there's the adventitia, the outer layer, the wrapper. Let's go back down. Here you see some muscles that are coming at you. Oops, you can see their nuclei. Oh no, getting blurry. You see the dark nuclei. You'll be able to see this with your naked eye even better. But then you see there's a difference right here. Now they run sideways, right? So I can see the grains going to the left and the right. So two muscle layers going in different directions are perpendicular. And then there's the serosa or the adventitia. It's really faint. You can, there we go. You can see it. And that's the outer wrapper. 4 layers. And you can always pop in other lenses and go deeper. But now it's time for us to move on to the next structure.